Hello, friend. I would like to invite you to sit down for a moment, right at this very instant, so that we can look deeply together into a feeling that perhaps every one of us has wanted to run away from at least once. That feeling is loneliness. In a world that is constantly moving and always exalting external connections, we are unintentionally taught that being alone is something frightening, a sign of failure or a dark void that must be filled immediately with superficial conversations or noisy distractions. However, what if today we tried to completely change our perspective on it? In the spirit of mindfulness and the timeless teachings of the Buddha, loneliness is not actually a painful emptiness as we often mistakenly believe. On the contrary, it can be an incredibly precious and vast space where your soul is finally allowed to rest and breathe after long, weary days of carrying the roles demanded by life. The only difference lies in our attitude and awareness toward the present moment. When you face being alone with resistance, you will feel surrounded by loneliness. But when you learn to loosen your control and open your heart to embrace the silence, loneliness is immediately transformed into noble tranquility. It is not a deep chasm separating you from the world, but a sacred sanctuary for you to return to and reflect upon yourself, finding the ultimate intimacy with your deepest inner being. You lack nothing when standing alone. You are simply being gifted a pure space to realize the inherent wholeness that noise has long obscured. Let us begin this healing journey with a very slow and gentle breath. To see them, Rule 1. Stop treating being alone as a failure. The first step into the Garden of Peace is to courageously cast off a prejudice that has long weighed heavily on the mind, the habit of viewing being alone as a personal failure. In modern society, we are surrounded by invisible standards suggesting that a successful and happy person must have many relationships, always appear in bustling crowds, and receive attention from everyone. Consequently, when standing alone, we easily fall into a sense of inferiority, thinking we are not good enough, not attractive enough, or forgotten by the world. However, according to the Buddhist teachings, the root of all suffering lies not in external circumstances, but in comparison within the consciousness. When you look at others' lives and compare them to your own stillness, you are planting the seeds of envy and sorrow. Solitude is actually a state of minimalist and clean living, a life free from cluttered thoughts. Imagine your mind as a house. If it is always filled with noise and the presence of guests, you will never have time to clean and rearrange your own hidden corners. Being alone is when you sweep away the dust of expectations and the debris of useless conversations to restore order to your soul. This is a life without frills, where you do not need to try to please anyone or strain to play a role for the world to admire. There is a beautiful truth you need to remember deeply in your heart. This is not loneliness. This is intimacy with yourself. When there is no one else beside you, it is your unique opportunity to truly listen to the voice of intuition, to understand every small pain and joy rising in your veins. This intimacy is more precious than any diplomatic relationship. For if you cannot make friends with yourself, you will forever be a stranger in your own life, even if standing among 10,000 people. Do not let the world's judgments dim the light of mindfulness. Choosing to be alone does not mean you have no one to love. It means you are steady enough not to need to cling to external validation. Take a deep breath and feel your own presence right now. You are perfect in your own way, and this stillness is not an end, but the beginning of a profound and complete journey of self-love. Rule 2. Solitude versus loneliness. To help you understand this intimacy more deeply, we must clarify a crucial distinction in the inner life: the difference between loneliness and tranquility. Have you ever wondered why, in the same quiet space and time without anyone around, we sometimes feel extreme agony, while at other times we feel immensely peaceful? The answer lies not in the outside world, but in the attitude of your mind. According to the Buddha's wisdom, loneliness is actually resistance. It is when you are alone, but your heart constantly longs to be somewhere else, with someone else, or to be a different version of yourself. This resistance creates an internal fracture, making you feel like an abandoned island in a vast ocean. When you refuse to accept the present moment as it is, you feel isolated. Thus, pain does not come from a lack of connections, but from fighting your own reality. Conversely, true tranquility is total acceptance. It is when you are alone and you are completely okay with it. You no longer seek to escape or fill the silence with worries or future plans. In a state of tranquility, you are like a calm lake where everything around is reflected most truthfully. The Buddha taught that suffering comes not from the circumstances we encounter, but from how we react to them. If you view being alone as an enemy, it will torment you with emptiness. But if you view it as a friend, it will gift you freedom. This is a simple lesson with great transformative power. Try observing your mind when you are alone. If you feel restless, wanting to grab your phone, or find someone to talk to immediately, that is a sign of resistance arising. At that moment, instead of running away, try to stop and smile at that restlessness. Tell yourself that right now, I am here with myself, and that is perfect. As you loosen your opposition, the burden of loneliness will automatically fall away, making room for a light and relaxed feeling. Tranquility does not require you to go to a distant cave. It only asks you to stop the war within yourself. When you accept reality without judgment, you realize that nothing in this world is imperfect. All suffering gradually dissolves when you realize you do not need to change circumstances to be happy. You only need to change how you receive the present moment. Rule 3. Create a gentle daily rhythm. Once we have learned to accept and open our hearts to stillness, the next step is not to make grand changes, but to learn to arrange life so that every moment becomes a soothing touch for the soul. A rhythmic and gentle way of life is the highest expression of self-respect. A common mistake people make when alone is falling into a state of laxity, neglecting basic bodily needs, or forcing themselves into harsh discipline to fill the inner void. However, from a mindfulness perspective, a regular routine is not a wall of coercion or the shackles of responsibility. It is, in fact, a sturdy cradle to support and care for your mind. Try changing your view of daily habits. Instead of seeing waking up, eating, or cleaning as tasks to get over with, see them as sacred acts of love for yourself. Discipline and mindfulness is the gentlest care you can give yourself. When you take time to brew a cup of hot tea and enjoy it in full presence, you are honoring the life flowing within you. When you put effort into cleaning your desk or preparing a nutritious dinner, even when alone, you send a powerful message to your subconscious that you deserve to be cherished. We often only care for our appearance or order when others are watching. But the true beauty of practice lies in how you treat yourself when there are no witnesses. Maintaining a steady rhythm prevents the mind from falling into confusion or aimlessness. It creates a safe platform so you are not swept away by sudden waves of emotion. Furthermore, the Buddha taught that every daily activity can become meditation if performed with awareness and gratitude. Eating, sleeping, and moving are not just biological functions. They are precious opportunities to train the mind. When you eat, just know you are eating. Feel the flavor and the nourishment for every cell. When you move, feel the contact of your feet on the ground. And when you sleep, practice letting go of all worries. These are practical exercises you can do immediately in your own space. You do not need a distant monastery. For your small kitchen or your soft bed is the place to practice self-love and awakening. A gentle rhythm helps you feel that each day is not a meaningless existence, but a journey deep into self-understanding. Rule 4. Make peace with silence. As we establish a rhythmic life, we move deeper into a state that is a source of fear for many in the modern world, but is the greatest treasure of awakening: silence. Most of us feel insecure when the surrounding space becomes too quiet. We tend to fill every gap with music, short videos, or television. Running from external noise is actually a desperate attempt to run from the noise within ourselves. According to the Buddha's wisdom, silence is not merely the absence of physical sound. It is the truest mirror reflecting everything happening in your consciousness. When the outside world goes silent, that is when anxieties, regrets, and the shadows we hide suddenly appear vividly. Many fear silence because they fear facing themselves, but this flight is the source of chronic stress and exhaustion. Making peace with silence is the most important step on the healing journey. View silence not as a bottomless pit of solitude, but as a clean space where wisdom can bloom. When you sit still in silence, the mind may initially become more turbulent, like a bowl of water with stirred mud. However, if you are patient enough to sit there without judgment, the mud of affliction will slowly settle. When the water of consciousness becomes clear, you will begin to see the truth about the nature of all things. You will realize that the inner storms are just clouds passing through the vast sky of the mind, and true peace always lies there, beneath those layers of noise. From an emotional therapy perspective, silence allows your nervous system to truly rest. When making peace with stillness, a natural clarity arises without effort. You begin to understand your true desires, the wounds that need embracing, and the burdens that need to be set down. This is when real healing occurs, not through words, but through quiet and tolerant presence with yourself. Do not see silence as a difficult challenge. See it as the most profound and sincere date with your being. When you no longer fear silence, you will no longer fear anything in this world, because you have found a sturdy support right inside your soul. As we establish a rhythmic life, we move deeper into a state that is a source of fear for many in the modern world, but is the greatest treasure of awakening: silence. Most of us feel insecure when the surrounding space becomes too quiet. We tend to fill every gap with music, short videos, or television. Running from external noise is actually a desperate attempt to run from the noise within ourselves. According to the Buddha's wisdom, silence is not merely the absence of physical sound. It is the truest mirror reflecting everything happening in your consciousness. When the outside world goes silent, that is when anxieties, regrets, and the shadows we hide suddenly appear vividly. Many fear silence because they fear facing themselves, but this flight is the source of chronic stress and exhaustion. Making peace with silence is the most important step on the healing journey. View silence not as a bottomless pit of solitude, but as a clean space where wisdom can bloom. When you sit still in silence, the mind may initially become more turbulent, like a bowl of water with stirred mud. However, if you are patient enough to sit there without judgment, the mud of affliction will slowly settle. When the water of consciousness becomes clear, you will begin to see the truth about the nature of all things. You will realize that the inner storms are just clouds passing through the vast sky of the mind, and true peace always lies there, beneath those layers of noise. From an emotional therapy perspective, silence allows your nervous system to truly rest. When making peace with stillness, a natural clarity arises without effort. You begin to understand your true desires, the wounds that need embracing, and the burdens that need to be set down. This is when real healing occurs, not through words, but through quieted and tolerant presence with yourself. Do not see silence as a difficult challenge. See it as the most profound and sincere date with your being. When you no longer fear silence, you will no longer fear anything in this world, because you have found a sturdy support right inside your soul. Rule 5. Stop waiting for someone else. As we grow accustomed to stillness, a major psychological barrier we often unintentionally build is waiting. Many of us, especially those who have lived alone for a long time, fall into the trap of postponing life. We tell ourselves we will only travel when we have a partner, or only cook a grand meal when the family gathers, or only be happy when we find our other half. In the Buddha's wisdom, this waiting is a form of suffering because it pushes all life's value into an uncertain future and turns the present into a temporary waiting room. When you move your life to the future, you lose the only treasure you truly possess, the moment right now. Waiting for someone to start living is a way of denying our own worth, as if our presence is insufficient without a witness. Understand that the meaning of this life does not need a witness to be brilliant. A forest flower still radiates fragrance, even if no one passes by to admire it. The moon is still bright, even if no one looks up. Your happiness and beauty are the same. They are inherently complete and have self-value without the presence of anyone else. If you only feel beautiful when praised, or only see life as meaningful when shared, your peace is entirely dependent on external fluctuations. The Buddha taught to be a lamp unto yourself and to take refuge in yourself. When you learn to enjoy a sunset or a good book in solitude, but with full awareness, you affirm to the universe that you are the master of your life, not a beggar seeking emotional handouts. A profound truth we must realize is that a relationship should be an addition, not a solution to your pain. If you enter a relationship hoping that person will fill the void in your soul, you will only create dependence and suffering for both. A healthy relationship is like two rivers flowing in parallel, bringing each other richness and freshness, not a depleted river waiting for the other to save it. This period of being single is the most precious opportunity to cultivate inner abundance. When you have become whole and confident in your own solitude, you will not look for someone to cling to, but you will attract souls with the same freedom and peace. Stop turning your life into a draft, waiting for a protagonist to appear. Be your own protagonist right now. Pursue your dreams right now, and cherish your presence as the greatest gift. Happiness is not a destination where someone is waiting. It is how you walk your path with steady feet and a heart full of self-love. Rule 6. Care for your mind like a child. Once you stop deferring your life to the future or waiting for a savior, you will recognize your most loyal but often forgotten companion, your own mind. True healing begins when you completely change how you dialogue with your inner self daily. Learn to care for your mind as a gentle mother cares for her young child. When a child faces difficulty or makes a mistake, they do not need harsh scolding. They need an embrace, a tolerant gaze, and sincere understanding. Our minds are the same. They are easily wounded by the pressures of the world, and your task is to become its most reliable protector rather than its harshest judge. Take time to observe the voice within you whenever you feel tired or failed. Do you ever realize that you are often crueler to yourself than anyone else? Those silent criticisms are wounds that bleed your soul day after day. In the Buddha's teachings, compassion must start where you stand, by learning to speak kind words to yourself. Do not force the mind to be strong immediately. Allow it to be soft and weary, and gently tell it that it is okay. I am always here with you. This compassion is not weak indulgence, but an immense healing power that helps your mind find stability and faith in life. An important law of operation is that whatever your mind hears most, it gradually becomes. If you constantly water your soul with negative information, toxic comparisons on social media, or low self-judgment, your mind will become gloomy and filled with anxiety. Conversely, if you nourish it with mindful reminders and beauty, it will automatically bloom in peace. Be careful with what you allow your mind to consume daily, for that is the material building the reality you live in. When you care for the mind with compassion and deep understanding, you will find the world around you naturally becomes gentler with you. Remember, you do not need to be perfect to be worthy of love. You just need to start being kind to yourself from the smallest thoughts today. Rule 7. Enjoy your own presence. When you have learned to dialogue gently with your mind, you will notice a miraculous shift in your daily emotions. We will no longer stand in the position of someone merely trying to endure loneliness. In reality, many can be alone for a long time, but deep down, they are just bracing themselves to get through it, like taking a bitter medicine, hoping for peace afterward. However, according to the Buddha, true freedom only appears when you begin to know how to enjoy your own presence, seeing it as a brilliant self-joy rather than a burden to carry. Enjoying your presence means feeling completely comfortable, serene, and fulfilled when alone, without needing any stimulation from the outside world. In modern life, we are often overly dependent on external stimuli to feel joy. We need a good movie, a delicious meal, or social media notifications to feel we truly exist. Yet all those joys are temporary and dependent. They disappear the moment the stimulus stops, leaving behind a void even larger than before. The joy from mindfulness or inner bliss has a completely different nature. It is a gentle, deep joy arising from stillness and your full presence in the now. You will find yourself able to sit for hours just watching a flower, feeling the breeze, or observing your breath while still feeling the heart overflow with jubilation. This is joy without reason, without conditions, and without the need for a witness. When you enjoy your own presence, you realize that you are a vast and interesting universe to explore every day. You become your own best friend, always there to listen and understand every moment of joy and sorrow. You no longer feel a lack or a need for compensation from anyone else, because you have found the source of joy in your own heart. Your presence is no longer a void to be filled, but a whole, brilliant, and vital entity. This is the state of self-existence the Buddha often mentioned, where happiness is not a distant goal, but a truth revealing itself in every minute you choose to sit still and smile at yourself with all your appreciation. Rule 8. Release comparison. As we begin to enjoy our own presence, a subtle mental obstacle frequently appears to break that peace. The habit of comparison. In an overconnected world, we easily fall into the trap of looking sideways at the lives of those around us through the brilliant frames on social media or the success stories of friends. We look at the flashy milestones or laughter-filled relationships of others, then turn back to question and doubt our own stillness. This sideways looking is actually an immense waste of spiritual energy and the direct source of unnecessary suffering. According to the Buddha's wisdom, each of us carries a seed and a blooming process that is completely different. When you look sideways, you are unintentionally taking others' standards as the measure of your happiness, which is like trying to force a lotus flower to bloom in the dead of winter, just because you see plum blossoms flourishing elsewhere. Comparison only brings a sense of lack and erodes the self-confidence you have worked hard to build. True wisdom only begins when you decide to withdraw your gaze from the outside to look within. Instead of wasting time observing how fast others are going or what they possess, focus on whether each of your footsteps is touching the earth in mindfulness. Looking inward is to understand the deepest needs of the soul, to see that true growth does not necessarily have to be noisy or cheered by the world. An ancient tree growing in the silence of the deep forest does not need to compare its height with the grass at its feet or the clouds above to see its value. It simply exists and reaches for the light according to its nature. When you have this wisdom, you realize that everyone has a brilliant moment and a unique lesson to complete, and the stillness you are currently experiencing is a necessary preparation phase for a deeper and more sustainable transformation later. A misconception we must courageously let go of is the idea that a quiet path signifies a meaningless existence. Society often defines the meaning of life through bustling events or visible achievements. But my friend, the value of a river lies not in the sound of waves lapping on the surface, but in the fresh water and the profound depth it brings to all species. A quiet life is a life rich in depth and contemplation. When you choose a path less traveled, a path free from comparison and competition, you are creating a sacred space for creativity, compassion, and understanding to flourish. A day spent in silence with a cup of tea, a gentle breath, and a peaceful mind brings far greater value than years of busyness in ignorance and weary rivalry. Do not be afraid when you see yourself walking alone or see your life as too simple compared to the noisy flow outside. Remember, the most precious things in this universe often exist in the most profound silence. Your stillness is not a setback or a failure, but a sturdy concentration of mind so you can live a truly deep, free, and meaningful life in your own way. Rule 9. Solitude as spiritual practice. Having walked the journey of letting go of comparison and learning to cherish our own presence, we touch upon a profound level of awareness where solitude is no longer an emotional state, but becomes a true spiritual practice. Bhavana. It is a painful truth that most of us live our solitary days as if sitting in a temporary waiting room of life. We stare only at the door ahead, hoping someone will appear or an event will happen to take us out of this stillness into a more bustling reality. However, if you always consider the present a waiting room, you are wasting your life and turning your most precious moments into meaningless endurance. According to the spirit of Buddhism, solitary walking, or the practice of seclusion, viveka, is not passive escapism, but the most powerful method to purify the mind and achieve absolute freedom. This is when you transform loneliness from a fear into a tool to open wisdom. Change your view of your current living space. Do not see your room merely as a place to sleep or hide. See it as a sacred sanctuary to train the soul. In this practice of solitary walking, every square meter of your home, every object you touch, and every action you perform carries profound spiritual meaning. A true sanctuary is not in the walls of a monastery or golden statues. It is where your mindfulness is present. When you hold a broom to sweep the house in total concentration, that is meditation. When you sit still observing thoughts passing without being swept away, that is concentration, samadhi. And when you clearly understand the root of the sorrows rising in your heart and gently let them go, that is wisdom, prajna. The daily life of a person living alone is the most vivid sanctuary, where you have no one to perform for and no judgment from outside, only you facing your own truth. This is the deepest philosophy you must penetrate on the path to finding balance. A solitary life gives you a golden opportunity to identify the faces of afflictions like craving, envy, or fear most clearly. Things that in a crowd we easily cover up or ignore. When alone, our ego has no object to display for or cling to. Thus it becomes naked and most vulnerable. In that nakedness, if you are persistent and tolerant enough to observe, you will see that ego gradually dissolve, making way for a wonderful blending with the universe and all things. You no longer feel like a separate individual fighting solitude, but you see yourself as part of the immense flow of life. This practice helps you build an inner strength so steady that even if you later stand among 1,000 people or continue walking alone, your peace will never be shaken. Cherish this time of solitary walking as a special retreat the universe has gifted you personally, so you can become a practitioner right in the midst of ordinary life, living a life of full awareness, leisure, and wholeness in every breath of stillness. Rule 10. Wholeness comes from within. As our journey through the 10 rules approaches its final steps, I want to invite you to contemplate the greatest truth an awakened soul can realize. Wholeness has always existed within you. For much of our lives, we live like workers trying to assemble a giant jigsaw puzzle that always seems to be missing the most important pieces. We frantically look for those pieces in lovers, careers, money, or the admiration of crowds. We believe we are a deficient entity, and only when we have those things will we truly become perfect. However, according to the deep wisdom of the Buddha, wholeness is not the result of an accumulation process or an assembly of external factors. Wholeness is actually a state you need to recognize within yourself, rather than finding or building it from zero. My dear friend, look deep into your heart and understand the core truth that you lack nothing to be happy right at this moment. The natural nature of your consciousness is purity, clarity, and abundance. Just as the vast sky is inherently blue, no matter how many layers of clouds cover it. Every sense of emptiness or loneliness you have felt for so long is actually an illusion created by attachment and unfulfilled cravings. When you learn to sit still and let go of external search efforts, you will begin to feel an innate energy of peace arising. That is the moment you realize you are the home, the support, and the most peaceful haven for yourself. This wholeness does not need permission from anyone, nor does it need any